The night was dark and eerie, with a thick fog enveloping the small village of. As the clock struck midnight, a bone-chilling scream echoed through the air, sending shivers down the spines of all who heard it. This was no ordinary village, for at its heart stood a house that struck fear into the bravest of souls. The infamous Shayabari Durgapur was once a peaceful place where life flowed as smoothly as the nearby river, but everything changed when the shadow of fear cast itself over the village. All because of that old, dilapidated house. The villagers whispered tales of its dark history, their voices hushed and eyes darting nervously as if the very mention of it might summon unspeakable horrors. According to the local folklore, passed down through generations, the house had a sinister past that stretched back half a century. It was said that a widow named Ranu once called it home, but Ranu was no ordinary woman. Rumors swirled that she was a powerful tantric, capable of wielding dark magic to harm those who crossed her path. The villagers spoke of strange rituals and eerie chants that would emanate from the house late at night, filling the air with an otherworldly energy. One fateful night, Ranu met a horrifying end, consumed by a mysterious fire that engulfed the house. The cause of the blaze remained unknown, adding fuel to the already rampant speculation. Some whispered that it was divine retribution for her wicked ways, while others believed it to be a spell gone terribly wrong. Whatever the truth, Ranu's demise marked the beginning of a new chapter. From that day forward, as the sun set each evening, an unsettling transformation seemed to overtake the structure. The shadows grew longer, the air grew colder, and an oppressive silence fell over the area. But the true horror began at the stroke of midnight, when the piercing cry of a young girl would shatter the stillness. The sound was unlike anything the villagers had ever heard, a wail of pure anguish that seemed to come from beyond the veil of death itself. Those brave enough to investigate the source of the cry were never seen again, vanishing without a trace into the depths of the shadow house. The disappearances only served to heighten the fear surrounding the place, and soon it was into this atmosphere of dread and superstition that a young man named Rafi, with his modern education and urban sensibilities, Rafi scoffed at the notion of ghosts. He viewed the villagers' fears as nothing more than primitive superstitions, relics of a bygone era that had no place in the modern world. As Rafi settled into the village, he couldn't help but notice the way people's eyes would dart nervously towards the old house on the hill. Curiosity piqued. He began to ask questions, only to be met with hushed warnings and fearful glances. The villagers, their voices trembling, implored him, but their words fell on deaf ears. For Rafi's skepticism was matched only by his bravery, and perhaps a touch of youthful arrogance. Determined to prove the villagers wrong and dispel the myth of the haunted house once and for all, Rafi made a bold declaration. "There is no such thing as a ghost," he proclaimed confidently, his voice ringing out in the village square. "I will go to that house tonight and show you all that there is. Nothing to fear." As night fell and the village settled into an uneasy slumber, armed with nothing but a flashlight and his unwavering belief in logic and reason, he set out towards the shadow house. The full moon cast an eerie glow over the landscape, creating twisted shadows that seemed to reach out towards him. As he approached the dilapidated structure, the old wooden door creaked ominously as Rafi pushed it open. Stepping inside, dust-covered furniture and tattered curtains spoke of decades of abandonment. Yet there was an unsettling feeling that the house was far from empty. At first, Rafi moved from room to room, his flashlight beam cutting through the darkness, revealing nothing but cobwebs and decay. He settled himself on the floor of what must have once been the living room, his back against the wall as he surveyed his surroundings. The minutes ticked by. He had been right all along. There were no ghosts, no supernatural phenomena, just an old, empty house. But then, everything changed in an instant. A cold gust of wind swept through the room. He spun around as he tried to calm his nerves, convincing himself it was just a draft from a broken window. A whisper cut through the silence. "Why did you come? Leave my house. ... The words were barely audible, yet they seemed to come from everywhere at once. Rafi felt panic rising in his chest. This had to be a trick, he told himself. Perhaps some elaborate prank by the villagers to scare him away. But deep down, a primal part of him knew that this was something far more sinister. Suddenly, without warning, Rafi's flashlight flickered and died, plunging him into total darkness as his eyes struggled to adjust. Slowly, he turned his head towards one corner, and what he saw there shattered his world of logic and reason forever. A shadowy figure stood motionless, its form indistinct and shifting, but its eyes, oh, those eyes, they glowed with an otherworldly light, fixed upon Rafi with an intensity that froze the blood in his veins. In that moment, Rafi knew true terror. With a scream of pure fear, Rafi leapt to his feet and ran blindly towards where he thought the door should be. But to his horror, he found only solid wall beneath his frantically searching hands. He pushed and pounded, just as despair threatened to overwhelm him. Rafi felt something behind him, a presence that radiated cold and malevolence, slowly dreading what he might see. He turned his head. An ice-cold hand fell upon his shoulder, its touch sending waves of terror through his body. Rafi's mind, unable to process the horror before him, simply shut down. He collapsed to the floor, unconscious, as the shadows of the house closed in around him. The next morning, there lying unconscious on the threshold, and no amount of shaking or calling his name could rouse him from his comatose state. For 3 long days and nights, Rafi lay in a feverish stupor, muttering incoherently and thrashing against unseen terrors. The village healer did what she could, but it seemed that Rafi's affliction was beyond the reach of mundane medicine. It was as if his very soul had been touched by something dark and unnatural. On the dawn of the 4th day, Rafi's eyes finally fluttered open. The villagers gathered around his bedside, eager to hear what had transpired in the shadow house. But the man who awoke was not the same confident, skeptical Rafi who had entered that cursed place. His eyes were haunted. When at last he spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. "The ghost is real," he said, his words sending a chill through all who heard them. "Ranu hasn't returned yet. ... With those words, Rafi fell silent, once more, retreating, forever changed by his encounter. The villagers, their worst fears confirmed, redoubled their efforts. To this day, the Shiabari stands as a dark monument to the mysteries that lurk just beyond the edge of our understanding. Its windows remain dark, but on quiet nights, when the moon is high, those who dare to listen might still hear the sound of Ranu's tears, a ghostly lament for a soul unable to find rest. The shadow house remains, a reminder that some secrets are best left undisturbed, and that the line between our world and the next is far thinner than we might like to believe. For in Durgapur, and the echoes of that terrible night continue to haunt the dreams of all who call this village home.